new from Muncie too. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard for the second time beginning after Pesach 2014. This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe. Margaret Vogel, blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. So we're going to start on page 611. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So the Torah says in this parsha, keep my Shabbats, my Shabbases, in the plural. And elsewhere it says, Bnei Yisrael should keep Shabbos to make Shabbos. So the repetition, people see in there that there's more than one Shabbos. There's multiple Shabbos, or there's two Shabbos. The Arizal here will explain, according to Kabbalah, why Shabbos is in the plural or mentioned twice. Okay. Jim, would you like to start at the top of 611?
Kedoshim, the Sabbath of the eighth king. Every man should fear his mother and his father, and keep my Sabbaths. I am God, your God. Rabbi Chaim Vital will begin his exposition of Arizal's teaching by explaining why the word Sabbath is in the plural when we would have expected the more usual singular form.
Okay. Now, the Talmud says the world is meant to last 7,000 years. Just as there are 6 days of the week, and then Shabbos, there are 6,000 years in its current state, and then the 7,000 years, the 7th millennia, is a state of Mashiach. Now, some explain that it's also compared to the Shemitah cycle. So some explain that just as there are multiple cycles of Shemitah that consist of 7 years, right? We have 6 years, and then a 7th year of Shemitah, we don't work the land. Then the cycle begins again, and then we have 49 years, 7 cycles, and then the 50th year is Yovel. So some people also say that just as there are multiple cycles of Shemitah that consist of 7 years, the 7,000 year cycle is repeated, just like the Shemitah cycle. These commentaries explain that we are in the second. How did I write that? We're in the second cycle. The Arizal rejects this opinion as if there were 7,000 years before our current era of 7,000 years. And this is the second time around. And it's going to keep repeating itself. So the Arizal rejects this. Okay. Jim, go ahead. Now,
by understanding the eighth king, as will be explained presently, you will understand the two Sabbaths the Torah refers to. Whenever mention is made of the Sabbath, it is mentioned twice. For example, this verse, keep my Sabbaths, and the Israelites will keep the Sabbath to make the Sabbath, etc. From this explanation, which will be given presently, you will also understand how those who say that our present sabbatical cycle is the second actually erred.
What?
You will understand how those who say that our present sabbatical cycle is the second actually erred. That's pretty awkward.
Okay.
You will understand how those who say that our present cycle, those who say this
are mistaken.
Yeah. I would say that's much clearer.
Okay.
According to the sages of the Talmud, our world is destined to exist for no more than 7,000 years, 6 millennia of normal existence, followed by a millennium of rest. This millennium time period is envisioned as one gigantic week. The 6 millennia of normal existence, according to the 6 workdays, the millennium of rest and reward corresponding to the Sabbath. In Kabbalah, this imagery is expanded to the sabbatical cycle of 6 years of field labor, followed by a year when the land is to lay fallow. The 6 years of agricultural work correspond to the 6 workdays, 6 millennium of normal existence, the 7th sabbatical year to the Sabbath and the 7th millennium. Furthermore, just as the agricultural cycle consists of 7 sabbatical cycles totaling 49 years, followed by an additional year of rest, the Jubilee, so the entire 7 millennium period of the world's existence, only one of such 7 periods, which will be followed by a 50th Jubilee millennium. Now, according to some opinions, our present 7 millennium period is the second such period since creation of the world. This is why the Torah begins with the letter Bet, the numerical value, which is 2. Arizal, however, contends this opinion is incorrect.
That would mean that the first cycle had a different Torah. Whatever. Okay. So as we've seen, we speak of 2 worlds. The world of Tohu, which is usually translated as chaos, or nothingness might be more accurate, and the world of Tikkun, which means repair. The world of Tohu is hinted in the 8 kings of Edom, the nation of Esav, about whom the Torah says he ruled and he died for the first 7 kings. The 10 Sfirot are divided into 2 groups. The first 3 that are states of intellect, and the final 7 that are states of the emotions. The 10 Sfiros are the process by which creation occurs. The 10 Sfiros are a process that causes creation. After these were expressed, came the first Shabbos. Okay, and we're gonna, as we go through, we're gonna explain more and more what this means. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
To explain, when God
emanated.
that doesn't make sense. When God emanated the 10 Sifirot, he first emanated the first 3. After this was the first supernal Sabbath. The Arizal now begins to describe the creation of the primordial world of Tohu, chaos. It is important to bear in mind that this imperfect version of creation was not a mistake or miscalculation on God's part, but rather a necessary stage in the unfolding of creation. God did not create time, of course, until he created our physical world. But before time, there was a sequential progression of spiritual steps leading to our universe. This sequence may be referred to as proto-time, although all these steps occurred simultaneously in the instant before the creation of the physical world. They followed a certain developmental order, which we as finite humans would experience eventually as real time. In this context, we may speak of the process of creation of the spiritual worlds preceding ours as if it happened in the context of what we call time, since we have no other way of describing a sequential progression. We must bear in mind, however, that time, as we know it, did not yet exist. In any case, after God emanated the first three Sifirot, Keser, Chachma, and Bina, the intellect, he emanated the next seven Sifirot, the emotions. Whereas the emanation of the first Sifirot is described as occurring on the same day, the emanation of each of the seven latter Sifirot is described as occurring on a different day. The last Sifirot, Malchus, was emanated on the seventh day. This was the first Sabbath.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
So what happened? The first three of intellect were not expressed in a way, I use the word express, use the word emanate, were not expressed in a way that was fully developed. In Kabbalistic terms, they were not in full repair. So over here, does not mean that something was broken and then we fix it necessarily. It just means that it's full and done properly. The next seven correspond to the 7 days of the week and are represented by the first seven kings of Edom. On the seventh day, the eighth king was expressed. One moment. Okay, go ahead.
So when he emanated these first three, he did not do solely, so he did not so in a wholly rectified manner, for they were not fully and properly rectified. Therefore, this day is not counted. The
I guess that
exact
means that the first three were not properly done, so they don't get counted as a day. Okay.
the exact nature of this not fully rectified emanation will be explained later.
Okay, continue.
Afterwards, he emanated a different group of Sephiroth in the 7 other days. These are the mystical correlates of the kings who ruled in the land of Edom. On the Sabbath, the 7th day of this primordial week, the 8th king, Chadar, was also emanated. The emanation of the next 7 Sephiroth is spoken as if occurring in 7 days, 1 day for each Sephirah. But since, as we have said, this is all occurring before the creation of time, what this essentially means is that each Sephirah is a separate entity. These 7 Sephirah will, when time is created, manifest themselves as 7 days of the week, each Sephirah dominating a particular day. It is told in the Torah there were 8 kings who ruled the land of Edom before there was a king in the land of Israel. Of the first 7 of these kings, the Torah states they ruled and they died. While of the 8th, Hadar, it only records that he ruled, not mentioning his death. Since Edom symbolizes unrectified existence of evil, the first 7 kings are understood to refer to the primordial, unrectified version of creation described here, the world of Tohu.
Okay. Now, the Torah says that the first 7 kings of Edom died. In the Kabbalistic terms, this means that the Sphirot did not last. This was due to the 3 spheres of intellect from which the 7 are produced were not fully developed. Each, and I guess because the 3 spheres of intellect weren't fully developed or were not mitukan, they weren't in full repair. Therefore, the spheres that came from them, that were produced, were faulty. Each sphere was entirely on its own and was not capable of being interdependent with other sphere. We've had that before, and the really I guess the one way to describe the spheres of Tohu is that each one, each sphere only had room for itself.
Mhm.
There was no place for interdependency with the other spheres. So here he explains in a very interesting way. Um, so this myopic trait is from strict judgment and cannot last. It's myopic because it only sees, if you want to call it, one point of view. It only can recognize this trait of chesed and has no room for anything else. And therefore it cannot last. Apparently, another way to say this is that they are not shielded from the infinite light, and therefore the infinite light is more than they can tolerate. We will explain this further. Everything here will be explained as we go through. And they do a very good job of that. So this idea that since the intellectual spheres weren't fully developed, the spheres that came out were faulty, and because they had no room for anyone else, it in a sense it shows their small-mindedness. Chesed was only chesed, Gvura was only Gvura, and they couldn't, if you want to say it this way, they couldn't see another point of view. And which is I which I is a which shows small-mindedness. Um, no, all right.
Think of probably totally from left field since it's from me, is that Adam, his mind wasn't cooled. I have no idea, but the idea that he wasn't fully expressed, and he needed
Adam?
He needed a mate because he wasn't fully able to express himself. He needed to, like the principle that something needs to break down more.
I've never seen this in relation to Adam. You need to
It's
understand, by the time Adam is created, all this has been finished already.
Yeah, but it would echo. It makes sense that when there's Adam, but he's still Adam Harishon. He's still not all the way there. So there's this, it said, I think Rashi said, of course, I'm reading the English, his mind wasn't cooled. I don't know.
Oh,
It feels like there's a connection that
it said
I think his Chachma wasn't cool, is what I think.
it doesn't say that. It says that he basic my understanding, what it says, is that he met with the animals,
Right.
and basically it didn't calm him down. He didn't cool off from that. It was only when after he met Chava that he could and relate to her. He was able to relate to her and say he calmed down. His passion cooled.
But what I'm seeing is like an image, the idea that Adam Harishon he hasn't separated yet.
But there might be similarities, but it's not this.
Okay.
I can tell you that what we're learning here is like people who have rock brain. and you can't,
Brain?
huh?
Rock, like a rock? ROCK?
Yeah, rock brain. Okay, and they can only they're like really see one point of view. You can't even talk to them.
Yeah, like our political issues in America these
Like
days.
exactly, like political issues in America. It's exactly it. And in this case, it's funny, Abigail, because each side blames the says that of the other. Um,
All these protesters who like rock brain towards Israel. Complete.
yeah, and again, and it's fine. It's fine if people don't agree politically, but you need to be you need to be able to talk about it and to discuss it without shutting down the communication. Or you whatever you call it, disfriend people, you defriend, unfriend people, where you unfriend people. Hold on. If you want, hello, if you want to join my Kabbalah class, I'll send you a link and you can join. Because if I didn't answer, then you would call again and again and again. What?
They should join.
No, hopefully by 8:30.
Rock brain.
But if I keep talking on the phone, I won't be done by then.
Oh, we're studying rock brain.
Okay, call me later, Lippy. I love him. He's a riot. So here you have political. I'm sure that each side sees this in the other, but you need to be able to talk. I there's people they shut down. They won't even have a conversation, and they talk, and and um and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but a number of years ago, I was in Costco. I had to wait because I was getting a phone, so it takes them a few minutes to bring it up from the front. And somebody saw me, and he stopped me there, and he was talking and talking and talking, and that didn't give me a chance to talk. And he's telling me that Trump is Mashiach, and Trump is the gematria of Mashiach, and so on and so forth, and this gematria and that gematria, and finally, my phone was ready, and Dan, who was my phone salesman there, Dan finally told me that my phone's ready. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. So whatever you, and I'm sorry, I apologize if I insulted anyone who thinks Trump is Mashiach. I have news for you, he's not. you, you might think he's a horrible president, you might think he's a wonderful president, or he would make.
But he's not the Mashiach.
He's not Mashiach.
He needs to convert first.
So, anyways, but that's what this guy was convincing me. So I'm saying is, we all this rock brain. It shows essential small-mindedness. You can't even discuss. You don't have enough open mind to consider another to consider another person, to let the other person talk. So this explanation here I think is really good. It shows you why this is why the spheres of Tohu, why they couldn't last, and why I guess there was a problem in the intellect, and therefore they couldn't last. I don't think we read it yet. Okay. No. Jim, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so continue since.
Since the first three Sephiroth were not yet fully rectified, all these kings died. Since they were not rectified above, these kings could not bear the supernal light of the emanator. Thus, since all these kings evinced, I guess, evinced strict judgment, they all died and were nullified. The perfection of the emotions is dependent upon the rectification of the intellect, since emotional responses are primarily the result of some idea that's understood. The rectification of these Sephiroth lacked was their ability to contain or absorb the light that is creative energy of God. In their fragility, they shattered as soon as the higher light attempted to shine through them. The reason why these Sifirot were so fragile was because they were immature and undeveloped. In this iteration, the Sifirot were simple, one-dimensional manifestations of God's attributes and did not include any aspect of their sister Sifirot. They were therefore incapable of accepting any content other than their own intrinsic one. This rejection of anything not consonant with one's own worldview is the mentality of strict judgment, din.
Anyone want to comment?
It's interesting. Of course, Abigail always wants to comment. It's interesting that what seems to me is stubborn and strong and firm in a bad way is called fragility. That strength isn't sticking to your guns.
What was fragile? It was a good point. What's fragile?
It said in their fragility they shattered. Second line.
Yeah, I know. What I'm asking you to tell me what's fragile. What was fragility?
Their inability to contain the light.
They shattered as soon as the higher light.
Yeah.
As soon as the higher light shined through them, as soon as Or Ein Sof touched them, they shattered.
Yeah.
It's the higher light.
Yeah.
It made them.
That's Or Ein Sof.
It made them susceptible to not that they wouldn't be able to contain the light. Okay.
I suppose somebody who's so hooked on something being true, like someone is Mashiach, and then it turns out it doesn't look that way, at least not for now, it can completely shatter everything.
Okay.
You can lose their footing.
That is a very, very interesting way to apply this. That's a very interesting way to apply it. And think of people.
I was only talking about Trump, of course. Right? Not anyone else.
Yeah, well, I serious. I mean, I brought up something I think we can all agree on, and again, it's important that it's important that we don't get either carried away or hooked in this. But I'm thinking think about people who have rigid ideas or rigid in their ideas. And in a sense that I guess you could say that they're fragile. They can't face any other thing, and it can really, really throw them.
The people whose choice for president doesn't win and they want to jump off a bridge or something.
Or leave for Canada.
Yeah, leave for Canada, that's right.
Okay, 7. The second world, the world of Tikkun, repair, is built with screens that block the infinite light from overwhelming the spheres. Just as you cannot look directly at the sun without being harmed, it is impossible to receive the full impact of infinite light. As each stage of creation moves further from the source, it's necessary for screens to block more of the infinite light. Stages of creation closer to the top can tolerate more of the infinite light and have screens that allow more light to shine through. And as we said at the last paragraph and last sentence in 7, another way that since they're not shielded from the infinite light, and it's more than they can tolerate. Okay, Alan, are you ready to take over?
I think so.
613 at the bottom.
I have already explained elsewhere regarding the supernal rectification process that it consists of separating screens that enable the lower entities to receive light greater than their intrinsic level without being blinded. This is similar to how someone is blinded by looking at the light of the sun. Thus, the dimming of the light is not a bad thing, but on the contrary, the rectification.
That's new to me to equate the to equate that the infinite light is blocked with the rectification, with the repair. They say that they're healthy because now they're in a good way and they're able to take the infinite light because it's only gonna be at their level, something that they can tolerate. Okay, go ahead.
By screening the divine light, Hashem created a new, more stable world that could withstand and transmit the light it received. The intensity of each sphere would be less, but this lack of intensity would enable each sephira to accommodate the personality of its sister sephiras. The combined strengths of each sephira present in the others would enable the world comprising them to endure the divine light shining into it.
One moment. Okay, I'm sorry, 8. Okay, here we are. The Torah does not say that the 8th king Hadar died. The 8th king corresponds to Yesod, the sphera that connects Zeranpin to Malchus. Since an essential function of the sphera is to connect, and we have had that many times in these classes, it did not have the myopic trait of the others that did not allow them to connect with other sphera. It seems like Yesod has this trait to connect intrinsically, and either it's it was totally able to connect, or at least had some redeeming ability, some ability to connect, which made it stand out, and this one apparently endured. Okay, go ahead, page 614 at the top.
Still, when the 8th king, Hadar, was emanated, he emerged more rectified than the others did. He manifested the sphera of Yesod. This was on the first Shabbos. As we have said, the principal reason the world of Tohu shattered was because the sephiras in it were too egocentric to interrelate. The reason this was so was because the predominant aspect of these sephiras was their malchus. Each sephira of Tohu was in effect nothing more than the malchus of that sephira in general. Malchus is the sephira of the ego, inasmuch as it expresses the drive to rule, to impose oneself on reality. The malchus of the sephiras clashed, and therefore the entire structure collapsed. The 8th king or emanation, in contrast, was constructed out of the yesods of the various spheres. Yesod is the sphere of interconnection par excellence, since it expresses the drive and ability to relate and connect with another entity.
Okay, 9. The Zohar teaches that the first 3 spheres of intellect were then repaired. We're going back to the story at the beginning. Remember, there was undeveloped intellect. It produced the 7 spheres, and then came the first Shabbos. Not real time, metaphorically. So the Zohar teaches that afterwards, the first 3 spheres of intellect were repaired, and a new set of 7 lower spheres were expressed from them. These are known to us as Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. Each of them correspond to a day of the week. Malchus is the sphera of Shabbos. Go ahead.
After this, the first three spheres were rectified, as described in the Zohar. Then the second week emerged, that is, the seven lower spheres, which we call nowadays Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod, and Malchus. Malchus issued on the seventh day, Shabbos. Out of this emanation emerged a second set of seven midos from Chesed to Malchus, which were more fully rectified than the first set of seven kings. The second set of seven constituted a second week or Shabbos cycle.
Anyone notice that something missing?
Where's code?
Very good.
Hmm.
Well, now it's in mine in red.
Okay, just saying, it ain't there.
I make all very good, Jim. I make all my marks and editing and corrections in red.
Yeah.
So one day when I record and write them all down, it'll be easy.
He's gonna have
Okay.
Yeah, he
code.
said seven, but didn't list seven.
Yeah. You know what just occurred to me? This is why only the spheres of Tohu are kings.
Because they're Malchus?
Because of this idea of myopic, of being single-minded, one-dimensional, no room for anyone else.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if they all met annually in Davos. All right, 10. This is why the Torah mentions multiple Shabbos, as we've seen in number 1. The first Shabbos was after the world of Tohu, when Yesod was the sphere of Shabbos. And the second Shabbos is after the world of Tikkun, when Malchus was the sphere of Shabbos. Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, okay. Thus we have two Shabboses, the first being the first Shabbos when Hadar was emanated, and the second Shabbos when Malchus was emanated the second time. This is the mystical meaning of the two Shabboses that are mentioned in many places, as we said above.
Okay, 11. And this is why it is said that we are in the second cycle of Shemitah. Kabbalistically, we are in the second cycle of 7. One moment. Okay, go ahead.
You will now understand the mystical reason. Yeah, you will now understand the mystical reason why we call the 7 millennia we are presently living in the second sabbatical period. It is because they are the second order of creation after the kings of the land of Edom. Thus, our present sabbatical period of 7,000 years is not the second because it was preceded by another period of 7,000 physical years, but because it follows the spiritual period of Tohu, the emanation of the 7 kings that preceded the present order, that of Tikkun.
Okay. 12. It does not mean that there will be 7 cycles of 7,000 years, ending with a period corresponding to Yovel, the Jubilee year. It's just because of the 2 steps in creation, the world of Tohu and the world of Tikkun. Okay, page 615 at the top.
In this respect, they, that is, the earlier authorities, erred as well. They said that if this is the second sabbatical period, then there must certainly be, in the end, a total of 7 such periods. Just as the agricultural Jubilee cycle consists of 7 sabbatical cycles, the macrocosmic Jubilee cycle should logically consist of 7 sabbatical cycles of 7,000 years each. In other words, after the 7th millennium of our time period, there will be, according to these opinions, another 5 sabbatical periods of 7,000 years each. The Arizal will now explain why this is not the case.
Okay.
Thank God.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Wow.
According to what we've said, the eighth king Hadar corresponds to Yesod of the world of Tohu. From this step, the spheres of the world of Tikkun are produced.
Mhm.
Yesod then precedes Chesed, the first sphere of the world of Tikkun, according to this. Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Understand, however, that Hadar, the eighth king, is entirely composed of Yesod, even though he precedes the Chesed that we nowadays call Chesed. When we refer to Chesed, we mean, unless we specify otherwise, the rectified sephira of Chesed in the world of Tikkun. In the normal order of spheros, Yesod is the sixth emotion, and Chesed is the first. So Chesed precedes Yesod. When we consider the initial emanation of the spheres of Tikkun, however, and note that they all emerged from Hadar, who was constructed wholly out of the Yesods of the primordial Sephiros, Yesod precedes Chesed and all the other Sephiros as well.
Okay, that's what it seems to be. How far do we go? Till 16. Okay, 14. Actually, this is not the case. What
Yeah.
happens is the world of Tikkun repairs the world of Tohu. The spheres of Tohu are repaired and integrated into the spheres of the world of Tikkun. Never knew that. The spheres of Tohu were overwhelmed by the infinite light. We refer to this event when the containers shattered. It's our task to select and purify the shards. Strict judgment is removed from them. They are purified of impurities, and they are then integrated into the proper sphere of Tikkun. Although they're in different worlds, the spirit of Tobit are actually the same as the spirit of Tikkun. So that when they get repaired, Chesed joins Chesed. Gvura joins Gvura. Gvura from the world of Tohu joins the Gvura from the world of Tikkun, and Yesod, which had been high, which I guess is higher than these, but it gets repaired and it joins Yesod of Tikkun. So now everyone's in the right place. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach. We won't forget about Hod and Yesod and Malchus. Okay. Alan, after.
After the second set of seven spheros were emanated, those other kings came back to be rectified, and they were all absorbed into the second set of seven spheros. When the first set of seven spheros, those of Tohu, collapsed, they didn't just disappear. These spheres were much more intense and powerful than those of the subsequent world of Tikkun, as we have mentioned. Their shattered fragments were therefore particles of great energy and potential. The challenge of the world of Tikkun is to assimilate and integrate these supercharged energy particles as far as possible. In fact, this is the whole reason why Hashem created the world of Tohu in the first place and did not just create the world of Tikkun from the beginning. Despite its name, Tikkun is not the ultimate fulfillment and highest vision of creation. The goal is to integrate these two worlds and produce from them a third order of existence much greater than either of them in and of themselves.
And that was new to me as well.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So 15. The Zohar says that some of the eight kings were repaired and some weren't. This means that parts of each king, of each of the eight, were repaired and parts weren't. It does not mean that some of the eight were and some weren't. Okay. Abigail, bottom of 615. After.
After the element of strict judgment has been removed from them and they had been purified of it like waste matter, the remaining elements of these sephiros were absorbed and sweetened in the second set of 7 sephiros, each one in accordance with its nature. The shattering of the vessels effectively neutralized the egocentricity of the Sephira of Tohu. Thus, rid of their negative judgmental aspects, they were able to be absorbed into the Sephirot of the world of Tikkun. This process is called sweetening, inasmuch as it evokes the imagery of some sour, poisonous substance being distilled and purified of its odious elements.
Continue, page 616.
Okay, this was possible because those kings were themselves these second 7 sephiros. The sephirot of Tohu and Tikkun, though radically different in their orientation, possessed the same identities. Chesed of Tohu was Hesed, just as Chesed of Tikkun. The difference lay only in the way Chesed was expressed. In this sense, the Sephirot of Tohu may be considered simply immature, undeveloped versions of the Sephirot of Tikkun.
Okay, and continue to the next paragraph.
It follows that the statement in the Zohar that some of them rectified and some of them were not does not mean that only some of the kings were rectified and others not. For all 8 of the kings were rectified. Rather, it means that in each of them, part of it was not rectified and part of it was.
Okay. At the beginning of creation, the Torah says, well, now we're going to talk about the shards, or sparks. At the beginning of creation, the Torah says, Baruch Elokim merachefes al pnei hamayim. The spirit of Elokim hovered over the water. The word for hovered, merachefes, can be split into 2 words, Mace, Reish Peches, meaning 288, died. This refers to the 288 shards that resulted when the containers shattered. These shards were from the spheres of Tohu. The light remained in Atzilus of Tikkun, but the shards of the containers ended up in the lower 3 stages of creation and were repaired there. Now, if you notice on the page, there's a right side in the Hebrew. There's a right text and a left text.
Yeah.
Those are 2 different books of the Arizal that are similar. They're very similar. One text says they were repaired in 1 stage lower than the place they fell, and one text says they were repaired in 1 stage higher than the place they fell. So one on the right says the ones that fell into Bria, the 2nd stage, were repaired in Yetzirah, the 3rd stage. On the left side, it says that the ones that fell into Bria, the 2nd stage, were repaired in Atzilus in the 1st stage. So, and then he translates, he just follows one on the right. There's a possibility that the one on the left is a typo, but unlikely. Okay, go ahead.
As has been explained in our discussion of the 288 sparks, sparks of each Sephira fell from Tohu into the subsequent lower worlds of Tikkun. The lights remained in Atzilus, and then what fell from Beria was rectified in Yetzirah, as is known. The death of the 7 kings of Tohu is alluded to in the Torah's account of creation in the verse, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. The word for was hovering, merachefet, may be split into 2 sets of letters, mem taf and resh pei het. The first set, mem taf, spells the word for died, mate, and the numerical value of the second set is 288. This word may thus be read, the 288 died. This alludes, according to Kabbalah, to the 288 sparks of the world of Tohu that fell after the collapse of that world and the shattering of its sephiros. Every sephira, as we have mentioned previously, is composed of its light and its vessel, the light of the divine creative energy that determines the nature and identity of the sephira, while the vessel is the means through which this energy is expressed, the interface between the light and the rest of reality. When the sephiras of Tohu shattered, it was the vessels that broke. The first world of Tikkun, created after the shattering of the vessels, was the world of Atzilus. The consciousness of this world is one of total immersion in the awareness of God, and thus the lights were able to remain in this world. With regard to the broken vessels, however, only the more sublime aspects were able to remain and be assimilated into this world. The lower, more self-aware aspects were rejected and fell further into the world of Berea. There, the same process was repeated. The more sublime aspects were assimilated and the grosser aspects were rejected. This process continued in the worlds of Yetzirah and Asiya. And finally, the coarsest aspects of Tohu became absorbed and embedded in our physical world. This process set the stage for the process of elevating the sparks or liberating the raw great power of Tohu from the physical context into which it has become entrenched. The conclusion of this process is what will precipitate the cosmic redemption of all reality and the coming of Mashiach. Thus, after the redemption, there will be no additional physical sabbatical periods akin to our present world, since physicality will already have been rectified. What will occur after the coming of Mashiach will be infinite ascents of the new physical spiritual order of creation into higher and higher levels of divinity and consciousness of God.
Okay.
Okay. So in the beginning we asked why there's two Shabbos and so on. So now we know one that followed the world of Tohu and one that followed the world of Tikkun. I should say, who knew?
There's a lot in this chapter. Who knew?